easy to look at stuff on a plan and think, well, this is where I want this, this and this. But until you live with something, you kind of learn a lot more about it. And I know we're always in a rush to do everything straight away, but sometimes doing something temporary, living with it and seeing how you change it is the best way to kind of learn how to do stuff on a small holding or a homestead. Okay, I was thinking about what video to do this week, and I was looking around my place and looking at all the temporary jobs I got and how my attitude had changed towards that over the last kind of 10, 11 years that we've been here. I grew up on a farm, all the land was rented. We had 200 acres rented from lots of different people, dotted all over the place. And my childhood was kind of full of temporary jobs. So we were always doing electric fencing. None of the fields were brilliantly fenced, there was a few that were. The gates never swung, so I was always dragging gates open, tying them shut, which I think is part of being a farmer's son, to be honest with you, or daughter. You are basically their gate opener. But when I moved here, I had this real attitude that nothing was going to be temporary. I was going to do a job and do it once and it was going to last. And I remember when I first moved here, there's like this little old wooden shed, and I said to Dad, I said, I'm going to take that eyesore down straight away. And Dad said, whoa, don't be quite so hasty, and smiled about it. And you know what, it's 11 years later, that shed's still there, and it keeps my firewood dry all winter. It's not a very pretty shed, it looks horrible, to be honest with you, but it does a job. And until I can afford to replace it with something much better, like a nice garage would be good to go there, it's doing the job. And, you know, kind of embrace that temporariness. When I moved here, I said to Dad, you know, about the gates. I joked, but in my 5 acres, I had more gates that opened than he did in his whole 200. And it was probably true at the time, I think. But things change, you know, like fences and boundaries change. You know, where you want to fence stuff in changes. There's some stuff that I've done and I was desperate to do permanent. I'm really, really glad I did it. So one of the big things is the garden. In the veg garden, I set all my beds out to start with at 4 foot wide by 10 foot. And I found myself skating around these beds all the time because I can only reach halfway in each time. And when I started reading like the Market Gardener and seeing some of the other kind of big market gardeners in America and France and places like that, and they all had their beds about 30 inches wide or 750 wide, and you could straddle the bed then and plant, and it just made everything a lot easier, and it was a bit of a game changer. And because I hadn't laid the concrete slabs that I'd kind of reclaimed, I just laid them on soil doing a temporary job. And because I hadn't laid them properly, it meant I could really easily move and adjust them. And that meant then that all my garden could be altered really quickly, really easily, in a few days, into 30-inch beds, and it made it so much better for gardening. So kind of like really embraced that, you know, that change around and being able to change it. If I'd have put that down on hardcore and concreted them down, it would have been a huge job to change it, and I probably would never have done it. So I'm really pleased that, you know, I've done some things that are temporary here. The same going further down the garden, I planted my orchard up, and then as the garden kind of grew and developed, I put the polytunnel at the bottom. It just made sense really where it was going to go. But to do that, I had to take out some fruit trees. Now I planted these fruit trees. These fruit trees were about 7 or 8 years old when I took them out to put the polytunnel in place. But it didn't bother me because I knew I'd planted lots of trees. I could alter them, you know, alter the orchard to suit. It actually created a bit of a microclimate around it for some other trees, improve those. But I did lose 2 kind of mature trees on that. But what I do is I plant trees every single year and kind of keep that cycle going. Yeah, so as my knowledge has kind of changed and I've learnt more, I've been able to adapt because some things are permanent here. I don't particularly like electric fencing. Haven't got sheep at the moment, so I'm not having to use it. Yeah, a massive memory of childhood was moving electric fencing or going every night after school to set up some electric fencing there, especially when we had stubble turnips. I mean, that's nothing to do with it being temporary, but just giving them strips for turnips every day. You know, even my sheds, my firewood storage, I'd filled up the one and I needed something quick and easy. So using pallet collars and some timbers that were kicking around, I made these really cool little mobile firewood stills that you can move with a tractor and loader, and they've worked brilliantly, you know, and the kids load them up every winter and we dry them there, and then we move it all up to the house ready for burning the year after, and it kind of becomes part of that cycle. If I yeah, it would be great to have some proper barns here and some proper buildings, but at the moment we can survive and manage and kind of adapt to do that. Yeah, I've got a shipping container to store more valuable items in rather than a barn. Yeah, you know, long term I'd love to build a barn and a garage, but you know, if I'd have put those in when I first got here, I think they'd be completely different to what I do now 11 years later. You know, be different sized, in different location. You know, so I'm kind of glad that I didn't do it straight away. If I had, you know, if I'd won the lottery and I'd come here and I just developed it all, rather than kind of living with it for a while, adapting with the conditions and knowing where the good parts are and bad parts are of my land, has been really beneficial to me. So I think looking back, I think maybe I was a little bit harsh on Dad for his kind of temporary way of farming some things. Sometimes it's nice not to leave a mark, you know, sometimes it's nice to do something that can be taken away afterwards relatively easily. You know, we've got that technology, especially with fencing, to separate and divide fields up and then to leave it afterwards, you know, and graze it and manage it in different ways as we learn different things. I'll tell you what though, all my gates swing, every single one of them. No baler twine holding my hinges on. I hate that. And it doesn't take that long, Dad. It's really easy to do. So you can do, you know, you could have hung your gates rather than making me drag these gates open when I was a kid. It would have been much better to spend 20 minutes hanging the gate.